Okay, well, good morning. I'm playing a little bit of triple duty today here. So
Appreciate
all good. Happy to do it. So yeah, welcome to Vox. Hope everyone's having a good holiday season so far. Everyone had their Christmas shopping done and out of the way.
Yeah.
Any last minute shoppers? Well, we do live close to the Brea Mall, so if you need to hit that on your way out, although it's probably an absolute zoo there now, so might be best to avoid it. Um, but yeah, just as a reminder, our church exists to love and serve the world, not stand in judgment of it. We really feel like we should be the safest place to talk about anything, which is a big reason why we have done this book series with Tim, and really appreciate the way he's modeled that and led us through that. And I think it's been I know it's been very valuable to me. So sad that it's almost at an end, right? We only have a few more chapters left. Yeah.
What's next?
Kicking around a few ideas. What's that? We'll see. And yeah, I love what's going on inside there. You know, that our church should capture the hearts and minds of the next generation. So as we do every Sunday, we take a verse from the Bible and read it 3 different times in 3 different translations. We've got the Salts who have volunteered to do that. I think we have Jonathan first, actually. The Hebrew Bible. Sorry, Joanna.
I show it's me.
Oh, maybe it got switched. Why don't you go ahead?
I'm closer to the front anyway. Yeah. And I'm reading from the First Nations version. Long ago, in the time before all days, before the creation of all things, the one who is known as the Word was there, face to face with the Great Spirit. This word fully represents Creator and shows us who he is and what he is like. He has always been there from the beginning, for the Word and Creator are one and the same. Through the Word, all things came into being, and not one thing exists that he did not create. Creator's life shined out from the Word, giving light to all human beings. This is the true light that comes to all the people of the world and shines on everyone. The light shines into the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it or put it out. Into the wilderness of the land of promise, which is Judea, came a man named Gift of Goodwill. Who's John? He was sent by the Great Spirit to tell what he knew about the light so everyone could believe. He was not the light, but came to speak the truth about the light. The true light that shines on all people was coming into the darkness of this world. He came down into this world, and even though he made all things, the world did not recognize him. Even his own tribe did not welcome or honor him, but all who welcomed and trust him received their birthright as children of the Great Spirit. They are born in a new way, not from a human father's plans or desires, but born from above by the Great Spirit. Creator's Word became a flesh and blood human being and pitched his sacred tent among us, living as one of us. We looked upon his great beauty and saw how honorable he was, the kind of honor held only by this one Son who fully represents his Father, full of his great kindness and truth.
Thanks, Joanna. On to the announcements, I believe is me. So what's happening here at Vox? First up are December birthdays. Of course, it wouldn't be a birthday celebration without a chamber. Happy birthday. Greg and Kathy recently celebrated. How was your guys' birthday?
Yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. Looks like Jacqueline just celebrated hers as well, and then Jackie's is coming up later this week. It's always fun to have your birthday near Christmas, right?
It's actually, for me, it's better than not having it. Most of my life.
There you go. All right, upcoming Sundays. So yeah, we're hard to believe we're rounding out 2025 already. Next week we'll have our annual virtual pajama party. So throw on your favorite pajamas, light up your fireplace if you've got one, cozy up, and we never know what's going to happen, but it's always some intriguing conversations. So you've never done it and it sounds a little weird, don't discount it. It's actually a lot of fun. So we always have a good time.
Also, you come to compete for the best speeches.
There you go.
What's the prize? It's a mystery.
It's bragging rights.
Bragging rights the whole year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Christmas pajamas from Markdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can get them after Christmas, 50% off. And then, yeah, we'll do our follow-up to what we reviewed today with Tim and Axe at the Knollmeyers. And then slight change in our order. We're gonna do our all Zoom service on the 11th instead of the 18th. That's because Kyle Fletcher is gonna be in town. We've been trying to finish our series with him. And excited to do that at the West on the 18th.
Get the previous week up on Zoom or on YouTube. You can watch 1 and 2 or VC 3.
Yeah, I know Ray did one of them, and I'm not sure if maybe the second one didn't get recorded accidentally, but I'll double check.
Okay.
Yeah. On that note, if anyone, Ray's been trying to hand off those duties for a little while. If you're interested in taking over, doing some slight edits to our services, and then posting those on YouTube, let me know, and Ray will get us trained up. I have another slide for the 25th, which we'll get to next, and then so yeah, January is a bit of a slightly differently scheduled month. Tim will come back with us on the 1st versus the 25th. Hopefully you guys are available to host that day too. I try and do it where it's the Knollmeyers, then the West, then virtual, then our house, right? Trying to keep a little consistency. But yeah, Sunday, January 25th, we're gonna do the state of Vox. Please come with thoughts, ideas, ways that we can potentially make what we do a little bit better. Or just bring some new ideas. We love to experiment with different things. So yeah, everyone's invited. We're gonna do lunch, share a meal together, and just talk about what's going on with Vox. Look forward to doing that. And that stems from, I know Wednesday nights can be hard for everyone to make our planning meeting, so this is kind of a little bit of an enhanced planning meeting of sorts. And speaking of planning meetings, we won't meet on New Year's Eve this year. I know that it'll probably be fun for everyone. We'll push that a week, meet on Wednesday, January 7th, and get all our volunteers lined up for the month of January. And then, for those who may not have heard, Bruce has graciously offered to kind of continue his, it's not really a official group therapy, right, Bruce? But just more of a open discussion, right? Come to talk about stuff. So for those who aren't aware, Bruce is a licensed therapist, but
I would say I'm gonna be on vacation, but the point was it wouldn't be my group, it would just be like an
Yeah.
extended breakout, basically. So, and I would also say on that note, the community pastors and Vox have been very underused for the past year, 2 years, which is probably a blessing because hopefully they're not suffering in silence, but that is our job. And that's Casey, me, Carol, Jonathan, and Johanna are all community pastors, and we were trained over the years in the past. And come alongside of you when you have trauma in your life, and you just need somebody to sit with you, listen to you. So take advantage of that if you need that. Communicate through that guy. Vox OC. He's the only one who reads that. So info at voxoc.com. Is that what it is? Info?
info at Vox OC.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the way to get off, to say I need help.
All right. Appreciate that, Bruce. Okay, now on to our worship and communion. We have the elements there. If you guys wouldn't mind passing those around, please. But yeah, I love that we officially made this a slide because I think this really summarizes, at least for me, the spirit of what communion should be all about. We come to the table to meet with Jesus. It's the most compelling invitation ever offered. You're invited with your questions and your doubts, with your hangups and your screw-ups, with your addictions and brokenness. The table is for you. The bread and the cup, they are for you. All right, now we have Jonathan up for our next version. And I got these out of order. So this is actually the Hebrew version.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things came to be through him, and without him nothing had being. In him was life, and the life was the light of mankind. The light shines in darkness, and the darkness has not suppressed it. There was a man sent from God whose name was Yochanan. He came to be a testimony, to bear witness concerning the light, so that through him everyone might put his trust in God and be faithful to him. He himself was not that light. No, he came to bear witness concerning the light. This was the true light, which gives light to everyone entering the world. He was in the world came to be through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to his homeland, yet his own people did not receive him. But to as many as did receive him, to those who put their trust in his person and power, he gave the right to become children of God, not because of bloodline, physical impulse, or human intention, but because of God. The Word became a human being and lived with us, and we saw his Shekinah, the Shekinah of the Father's only Son, full of grace and truth.
Thank you, Jonathan. All right. So yeah, now we're on. The good Dr. Timothy Gombis is going to be leading us in Acts 22 and 23 today. Before we get to that, Tim, do you want to gloat a little bit more about what happened yesterday afternoon?
What?
I just turned it off.
What?
I turned it off.
Yeah, the last 2 minutes of the Bears Packers rematch. Let's just be great. Couple minutes.
Oh, boy, were you guys watching it together?
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm a Packer fan. Tim's a Bear fan, and I was loving life for 58 minutes of that.
That's right.
And then yeah, it came on a dime, and the Bears pulled off. That was a great game, despite the outcome. So I've been reveling in that.
I think that's gonna be today's message instead of.
Attempt to do the happy dance.
The last time I saw kids like that.
Yeah, it was a series of extraordinary events. It was kind of fun. All right, we are in, as Casey was saying, we're getting down to the end here of, our study in Acts, which, began, I think, did it not begin in January of this year? Yeah, we were in, Luke. I think it was for a year, and then, so we're projected to be done in March, I think. Pretty crazy. Feels like it's gone fast. And but it's been fun to see a whole bunch of really interesting themes woven through the Gospel of Luke, and then also picked up and worked through in Acts. And I thought it would be really critical to remind us that obviously this is a single author, Luke, and there are some themes. Well, there's one really significant theme that is running through our passage for today, and that is, you remember, from way back in Luke, travelogue, which I think was like Luke 9 through like 21, something like that, like 9:51. Jesus starts to go to Jerusalem, and on that long trek to Jerusalem, he's talking about one thing, and like all the miracles that he does all revolve around one thing, and that is that he's building radically and scandalously inclusive communities that are going to upset people. People are going to be upset by how inclusive they are. And I just was thinking back about this last week. There's a sense in which some of the gatekeepers are scandalized. You know, the Pharisees are scandalized by how inclusive Jesus's communities are. And that, I think, resonates with a lot of us that look with suspicion at gatekeepers for God's people. But then you remember, even some of the gatekeepers are being included. And that scandalizes people that just hate the gatekeepers. So, I mean, it's just like Jesus is building this crazy but a network of communities, and they scandalize everybody. And that theme is running through Acts as well. We've seen it, and I want us to keep that in mind, because we see that in those chapters, or we see that in this in the defense that Paul makes here in the initial defense he makes with his in front of all these Jewish people. And then let's keep in mind the context of what has just happened. You remember Paul is in a real hurry to get to Jerusalem. And you remember all these communities of people that love him. And I'm like, Paul, are you serious? Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't go. And then there are all these prophecies that are made. And based on those prophecies, people plead with Paul not to go. And we just got through that like passionate stretch where people are like grabbing him, weeping over him, and like won't let him go to get on the ship. And then he arrives in Jerusalem, and trouble breaks out. And James told Paul, look, it's not cool that you're here. People have heard this. And do you remember what they've heard? People in Jerusalem have heard. You see, brother, how many thousands of Jews have believed, and all of them are zealous for the law. This is in 21. They are zealous for the law. They have been informed that you teach all the Jews who live among the Gentiles to turn away from Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children or live according to our customs. So that's the slander that has been, kicked around about Paul. And then this is really interesting. In 21:18, this is the event where Paul actually is in the temple, and all these people, well, I should say, Paul is in the temple, and people recognize him. Some Jews from the province of Asia recognize Paul. And it's really interesting what they say. And again, remember, this is Luke narrating this. He's telling us the story, so Luke puts these things in. Verse 27, they stirred up the whole crowd and seized him, shouting, "Fellow Israelites, help us. This is the man who teaches everyone everywhere against our people and our law." So our people against Torah and against this place. And besides, he has brought Greeks into the temple and defiled this holy place. So I'm not sure it's against the people, against our law, Torah, and against this place, which I think is probably the temple or maybe Jerusalem. But it's, I mean, I think those would be synonymous in some ways in the Jewish mindset. So that's what happens. And then Paul gets arrested just because I think the Roman soldiers were trying to prevent him from being torn to bits. And then we get this really dramatic scene in the opening of our passage for today, which is, Paul asks to be able to speak to everybody, and he speaks in Aramaic. And that's where we've arrived at. And I point out a couple of those things just to point out what I think is really fascinating about his speech. And then I want to hear what you have to say about it. But a couple things are really fascinating. First of all, you remember, keep in mind what is said in 21:28 against our people, against our law, and against this place. And so when Paul begins to make his defense or his speech, he gets up, just listen to my defense. He's going to speak to them in Aramaic. They became very quiet. And he says, "I am a Jew, people, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city, place, and then thoroughly trained in the law of our ancestors, Torah." So those are the objections that people have, is he speaks against our people, Torah, in this place. And he speaks directly to those objections. He's like, I'm you. We're the same. I'm a Jew. I was brought up in this city. There's nothing, he's not against it. And thoroughly trained in the law of our ancestors. And what's then interesting is he says, I was just as zealous for God as any of you are today. And that gets to like the zeal thing. Like all those people who are zealous for the Torah who think that Paul is like ahead of them. I mean, he was just as zealous as anyone.
He's speaking to the exact right crowd too, because they're not always going to be visitors, but they are at this moment.
Much of them, yeah, many of them are.
Many of them are not Jerusalem people. They're Jews from other areas like he is. And he's like speaking to the exact right crowd, and it still doesn't say no.
Yeah. Well, what also is interesting is he's the zealousness that he's talking about is zeal for the purity of Israel. So like the zeal is, and the persecuting zeal is to keep Israel completely untouched by anything Gentile. That's what zeal is all about. Because in the couple hundred years leading up to Paul's day, the Jewish people have been kicked around. They've been dominated by foreign oppressors, and the foreign oppressors are like using like a carrot and stick approach with the Jews, like, being super cruel to them, but then also offering them incentives to basically be less Jewish or less particular and become more like Greek and more, move into like a blended way of life with the rest of the Mediterranean world. And as a backlash against that, Pharisees and other zealous people that are zealous among the Pharisees have basically persecuted Israel to get them to be more particular and dedicated to God, basically. Mm-hmm. And so this has everything to do with like making sure there's no Gentile influence in Israel. And Paul was leading the charge in all of that. The next thing that I think is interesting about the speech is that you'll notice Paul is talking about his experience of being like grabbed hold of by Jesus. It's not like he turned to the Lord. I mean, you remember this. He was just doing his thing. And Jesus just like invaded his life. And what's interesting to me in the speech is that he's talking about this. He's on his way to Damascus, and he talks about you have this light, falls to the ground, says, "Who are you, Lord? I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuted." And I think it's really important to kind of what Jackie was getting at, to talk about the audience. Keep in mind the audience when they hear talk about Jesus. What's their response to this so far? Remember, Luke has done this twice, I think twice, I know it at least once. He has mentioned that the disciples were having favor with all the people in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is full of sects from among the people. There's all kinds of different groups, all these different sects, and the Jesus following group is one. And it's probably the one that is super like active and activist, especially, and by activist, what I mean is not trying to convert everybody, but doing a lot of good, like doing a lot of service in the city. And among the Christians in Jerusalem, there's nothing but Jewish people. That's the only people who live. And so this is like a popular group. I just think it's so fascinating that this group that wants to kill Paul is not upset about Jesus. Does that make sense? In fact, I think there are probably a bunch of people that are among the passionate folks here that are upset at Paul that are probably Jesus following Jews. And they've heard things about Paul and they want him gone.
And there's such a tradition in Jewish faith of keeping yourself pure. So like any suggestion of a person coming in who's doing something that's counter, which he's not even doing, but that's like that's like inbuilt into Jewish culture. Like you don't tolerate that.
Right. You're selling out.
And he's not doing it, but it's like they found the weak point that they can get a crowd to flock against him.
I mean, there's the three, I mean, the young men with Daniel that are in Gentile territory and they're faithful to their people's ways.
Yeah.
And then there's like Ezra and Nehemiah, when the people intermarry, they like have all these divorces to make sure that there's no Gentile blood brought into the people. So it's like part of like the heroes of some of the ancestors that there's like no mixture with non-Jewish people. So Paul goes on and tells this story. Let's see here. I'm Jesus. No response from the crowd. They're fine with Jesus. Not a problem. Even if they're non-Jesus following Jews. And then let's see here. Oh yeah, verse 14, he says, the God of our ancestors has chosen you, is what Ananias says to Paul, which is interesting. Again, the God of our ancestors, the God of our people. So Paul is not against our people. This is the work of the God of our people. Okay. In verse 17, in his speech, he's talking about returning to Jerusalem and praying at the temple. He's not anti-temple. He's not anti-Jerusalem, right? But here's where things turn a little bit. Oh, by the way, do you remember Stephen's speech from Acts 7? Where there's so much of the speech is like, oh yeah, run board. But then he makes that turn and he's like, yeah, it's you people. That's when they want to kill him. Well, I think there's a little bit of a turn here in verse 18, because he says, quick, leave Jerusalem immediately, because the people will not accept your testimony about me. So Paul is talking about this vision he gets from Jesus about basically what's happening right now, right? They're not going to believe testimony. And Paul's like, Lord, come on. Of course they will, because I persecuted away and even was there when Stephen was killed. How will they not believe me? And then the statement that makes them lose their minds is when he says in verse 21, the Lord said to me, go, I will send you far away to the Gentiles. the crowd listened to Paul up until this point. They raised their voices and shouted, rid the earth of him, he's not fit to live. So what's interesting about this speech is that all these Jews in Jerusalem who are gathered, as Jackie was saying, like this is all the pilgrims are in town. So Jerusalem it's not a big place. It's swelled with visitors, like 3 times its normal size. So it's packed, and there's all this fervent, revolutionary, passion in the city. They're all ready to just lose their minds, and that's what happens. It's a tinderbox. But the thing that does that is not Jesus. It's that inclusive element. That's why I went back to that theme that Luke has been developing, that Jesus is building these scandalously inclusive communities, and he's going to be offensive to people. And here you've got that being offensive to the very, like the heart and the core of Judaism, which is in Jerusalem.
So how does that work, Tim? If you're saying, or your take is that it's not against Jesus, but a big part of who Jesus is creating inclusive. So in a way, it kind of is about Jesus.
Yeah.
Though, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's just that what I'm trying to say is like it's not like the way that I was taught, this may be familiar to some of you, the way I was taught was that Judaism was like stuck in this legalistic frame, and then Jesus offered this way of grace, and they just couldn't handle that.
So they were fine with that part,
Yeah, because they're like the grace part, and God is a gracious God, and then Jesus as one possible way of continuing the Old Testament story. Like they're okay with that.
that part of it. Okay.
Yeah, like we'll keep checking that out, and there are some great people that believe that. That's fine, but it's the inclusive part, and the Jewish Christians in Jerusalem. I think if you think about, and I think this is what James is being sensitive to when Paul arrived there. Like you've got all of the everyday. They talk about common Jews, just all of like the everyday, day in and day out Jewish Christians that are part of the church. And they may have heard the apostles at some point teaching about including Gentiles, but it probably never came up as a sermon topic.
Or they never thought it'd turn into a reality.
Never thought we would see it. Yeah, it's like, I remember growing up and singing singing those songs about Jesus' inclusivity, and when I was a kid, red and yellow, black and white, they're all precious in the sight. And it's like none of us were part of multi-ethnic churches. So it's like, it's all theory, and even the apostles struggle. Like when Peter went to North and had that interaction with Paul in Antioch, it's like, you can talk all you want about how we all need to be comfortable sitting down and having a meal with people that are unlike us. But then Peter did it, and he was like, I don't know. And it took that vision for him to be pressed into that. So I kind of think it just they'd never been pushed to sort of have this be a reality. Or when they had, it took a vision. Like, go, Peter, sit down with that Roman centurion. Go into his house. Or Simon the tanner. Go into his house. So
part of it is that the Jews that followed or believed in Jesus, part of it was this idea of, Jesus came to eliminate physical sacrifice at the temple. You sin, you sacrifice a pigeon or a lamb or a cow, but Jesus took that away to say, you can have faith in God. You don't have to physically bring the sacrifice, human sacrifice of oil or whatever. So they're okay with that, but their concept was that Jesus came to save the Jews. So this is how we Jews can connect with God, but it wasn't an idea of Jesus came to allow everyone, non-Jews, to connect with God.
yeah, I think even the Jewish Christians, just about that first part that you were saying, David, I think even the Jewish Christians, and this is what Paul was all about too. Remember, he wants to get back to Jerusalem, to go to temple, to fulfill a vow. And I think among the Jewish Christians, they were still going to temple, still doing the sacrifices. Like all of that was was part of their heritage.
Yeah, the tradition.
It's just that now they're in Jesus. What they have trouble accepting is that Paul's going around teaching around the Mediterranean world. Non-Jews don't have to do any of this stuff because it's just not part of your heritage. You can, you can be Christian and be in Jesus and without doing all the Jewish particular stuff. And they're hearing what Paul's saying is temples are irrelevant now, Jerusalem's irrelevant, to be Jewish is irrelevant, Torah is irrelevant. But he's not saying that. He's just saying for non-Jews, that's not what they do. So anyway,
It would feel like an attack on our culture.
that would feel like an attack on everything that they're about. Yeah, and God. Because God is underwritten the whole thing.
Some kind of an example of what we always see. Always easy to be scared or find it offensive of the other. But like their tradition is you keep it in the family, you keep it tight, you're only with Jews, it's only for Jews, it's that God told them to do that. But they've conveniently forgotten that God also promised that they would bless the world through that. So like the keeping it tight was so that Jesus would appear, not so that they could keep keeping it tight, but they're the first generation that's not supposed to keep tight anymore. But we all like there's a whole like all this immigration stuff and everything, like it's always all against the other.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
always against the other. You always like personal human weakness that we all do. But this culture had it inbuilt because God had told them
they have a Bible
to keep
to back
it.
up
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just like to an extreme, but it's not really that extreme. It's pretty normal for us to blame any other.
Yeah, it's very human. What happened with them, with this generation is very human. Like
That's your question.
well, what you're saying, Casey, is dead on. I think that Jesus himself does not seem like a threatening character, but yet his teachings must not have been widespread among the larger Jewish culture. And like Jackie was indicating, I think this is how we all hear biblical teaching. You hear like the parts that you're not crazy about, you just like, something like this.
But
There's also a question.
Wait, hold on. Wait, really, what were you saying?
Reading this, two things really came. Okay, he knows he's addressing people that are differing with him. And he enters every statement almost with brother and fathers, brother. And if I'm hearing somebody that I don't think's right on, don't call me your brother. So my question is he intentionally being antagonizing or is he trying to be unifying? And the second question I have is, sometimes I still have trouble with the anti-Semitism, and I'm wondering when there's kind of different qualifications for the Christians here. I don't know how far it goes out into history, but the Jews are going to keep on doing this, but you Gentiles don't have to do this. Is there any roots in that causes more anti-Semitism?
What do you mean by that?
Well, the I don't know, the grace issue and understanding, like, and why did so many Jews leave to drop out
What?
of Christianity?
First, I don't think Paul's being antagonistic. I think he's making an appeal. I think he's trying to be appealing. You're for like a sympathetic audience. And I think he wants them to hear. At least that's how I read it.
Is reminding them, I'm one of you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
You are my brothers, you are the fathers among us.
Yeah.
But they're saying you're not anymore.
Yeah, but he's trying to
Totally. I think that's how he's approaching it.
Okay.
I keep thinking back to the time when Jesus was talking to the Samaritan women, and he says there's come a time where they're not worshiping any temple, basically alluding to the fact that he's the temple and the church is the temple at that point. And then, when he dies, the curtain is torn in half, temple. Did they not get that? I mean, does anybody else in the Gospels or in the letters emphasize that point in the way they talk about the body of Christ? And Because it seems like that, those are some pretty big, I don't even know if the disciples were present. Somebody had to have heard that story. Remember, he's talking to that woman alone when he says that, but I don't know how they knew what he said to her.
Yeah.
But I mean, that whole, I always think about the temple, the curtain being torn, and then you go to Hebrews where it says you can walk right into the presence of God now, you know, because Jesus is advocating for you right next, you know, at the right hand of the Father. And we don't even know who you.
But that goes, the verse that
Well,
goes to who.
Hold on one
controls
second. Let me just
the
go back to Marilyn's second question. I think that the Jews, when did anti-Semitism like really get underway?
100 years ago? 200?
Oh no.
No, it's been around since at least the Middle Ages.
Yeah, Middle Ages, but it was a group that controlled the narrative to say that the Jews killed Jesus, but that didn't exist for several hundred years.
No, it began right away, like
Right away.
basically about in like 105, 110 with Justin Martyr. Because what happens is like, keep in mind the timing of, which is really important, I think, the destruction of the temple in 70, which it's like, it's so hard for us to understand what that meant. Like, just like in this narrative, speaking against this place, it's like,
Yeah.
the place held them together as a people. So once it's destroyed, like Jews scatter, and Jerusalem is no longer the place that sort of holds together the Christian movement. And so very quickly, people scatter to like Egypt and like up across the Mediterranean to Europe. And the center of gravity kind of slowly moves into Europe, but certainly away from Jerusalem. Parts of Europe and parts of Egypt. And very quickly, Christian thinkers start talking about that strange, the freakish set of practices that the Jews have. The strangeness. You know what I mean? Like they start talking like that, like in 110. So in the early part of the 2nd century. And so very quickly, Christian people turn against, and they look at passages like we're reading, or like the one in John, where may his blood be upon our hands. Passages in Galatians, and so very quickly, the Christian movement turns anti-Jewish. Which is really unfortunate because in the last probably 50 years, Christian theologians have been going back and examining what they call the parting of the ways. Like, why was there this divergence when it should never have been? You know, that was like a bad turn in the history of the church, which is really sad. But it happens. So, and it shouldn't. It's like Gentiles needed to keep in mind that the first followers of Jesus were all around the temple. We have, like in Acts, they're all around the temple. They're Jewish, and nobody ever told them stop being Jewish. They just needed to recognize their cousins and brothers and sisters in the faith who were not Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
They struggled with that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then the exact opposite problem happened like within 50 years, where like the Gentiles were like, well, we're not talking to those cousins and family members anymore. And they're not family members. We hate them. So it's just that the second problem is what we've been saddled with for 2,000 years.
And that continues to today.
Yeah, totally.
Because you look at, I mean, the modern church is, you know, groups have excluded each other because I grew up in the evangelical fundamentalist part of it for a while. It was like, those Catholics are lunatics, you know, and we stopped singing those songs and those liturgies. And it's almost like you have churches that are just like, we don't have anything to do with the past 2,000 years of Christianity because we know what's right now.
Sure, yeah.
And I'd also say that anti-Semitism existed before Jesus. Because the Jews had always made themselves be separate, so that made them a target. And they also, as we saw as they got into like the Middle Ages and stuff, they were always lenders of money, which made them also people that were disliked. But like actions against the Jewish person group was like a constant. Like, I don't think it's ever not really existed as long as Jews have existed, like post Egypt. I think they've always had groups against them. Partially because God mandated that they stay separate, but that also meant like God told them to murder like whole groups of people. Like, so like they've like, I don't think anti-Semitism is just a post Jesus thing. Like, I think it's been a like this people group always thing. And it's also gotten worse post Jesus. It's definitely gotten worse, but I think that anti-Semitism is like a inbuilt to Jewish culture as some of what they practice.
So that speaks, you teach us quite a bit, but that seems to speak to the fact that we always focus on the gospel as this individual thing, and it's the bigger picture. It's him bringing the entire world into fellowship with himself.
I think that's
Yeah.
why it's so radical, right?
Yeah.
Okay, tribalism is kind of hardwired into us from the time we're real young. I mean, the elementary school, we had Blue Gold Day where you can be, in Green Bay, Chicago. Like, I grew up in Philadelphia. I grew up in Philadelphia. We hated Pittsburgh fans who are the exact same fans, really,
Same state.
on the other side of the state. And Jesus was like, no, like, it's who's my neighbor? It's everyone. And like you said, a radical inclusivity is so different, and that's why people hate it. It's like, I don't know why, but there's something really deep in us that
Yes, we default to like demonization of the stranger.
the other, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a liberation.
Yeah,
Well, even
it
It's
is.
a liberation
responsibility.
versus a conserving the status quo.
Yeah.
And no matter what happens in no matter what situation, there's a group of people that really hate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, protection, self-preservation within your own family or your own group, your own
Yeah, protect our tribe, rally our so that's,
I'll just say it's ego and pride. Like, I'm right.
yeah,
Some of it comes from security.
yeah. Self-preservation.
It's so incredible how just fandom, like going to a ball game, can turn,
Oh, yeah.
from a very innocent into.
violence.
Violence, yes, yeah, we were talking about that last night.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
South American soccer.
So it's just so.
Great.
Just in,
Right.
that seed of that exclusivity or,
Yeah.
yeah. That we always have to catch on. Even as we're trying to be inclusive of Israel. Sure enough. There's going to be some exclusivity
Yeah,
about us that's going to be denying membership to somebody over here. It just feels like it's.
yeah. The dynamics are there, the dynamics are latent in each of us and in all of us. And then also there's the way that the New Testament writers talk about it is like the very, there's the prince of the power of the air, who's kind of like sewed within human cultures, like the propensity to be suspicious of what's unfamiliar and all of that. I just think about, I think wasn't it at the beginning of Lord of the Rings? I did read the books. I'm not interested in the story, but I mean, just in the film, I had to watch it with my kids, and I watched it. But there wasn't like, they talk about how like human tribes spread out and end up losing contact with each other.
Yeah.
And then like they show like these fires that are being like communicating that way, but they're not familiar with each other anymore. And then something happens and they suspect the other group that they just haven't talked to for a while.
Yeah.
Well,
It's just kind of like festers.
it's exactly where you live. In terms of that whole Appalachia, like West Virginia, Pittsburgh, Indiana, Ohio, they have these hollers, right? These little valleys, and people live within their own small groups, and they're like half dozen McCoys. They're like
Yeah,
the other
right.
people over the hill. Those people are no good.
Yeah. Yeah, everywhere. Yeah, totally. Yeah, we band together with our tribe.
I'm feeling really convicted for, as I said, I didn't want to be their sister, but they're with them.
You don't want to be his sister.
Yeah, I said starting out with brothers.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going, so there you go.
Good job.
I mean, I understand like Hagar and the other, you know, and all that Islam and Middle East stuff, but the that church.
Yeah.
Anti-Semitism,
That's it.
for God.
Remember I told you this morning, I read that column that David French wrote on the New York Times, I guess it's today. But his main point was that Christianity is a dangerous religion to others, but it's not dangerous to Christianity, but it should be, because if you truly follow the hardest commandment, which is to love your enemy, you're not going to be liked by the rest of the world at all. And
Yeah, well, we're not gonna be liked by the rest of our tribe.
exactly. And so you're going to be, and well, he prefaces it with that, where it's about a Christianity that's only inclusive to those who follow the demonization of other people, you know, for not doing the fundamentalist version of,
Yeah.
you know, like how they, I should say, they, when I include myself at time in the past, for sure, demonize people, you know, just, you know, using cruelty easily and proudly to bring
Yeah.
people back into the fold,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
so, yeah. So it's
That
like,
could also,
but he's saying, yeah, or true Christianity, it's cool at all, it's inclusive.
Yeah.
He doesn't use that word, but that's his
I
point.
should, I wonder if that's a little sheds light into the anti-Semitism in the early church too, because for me personally, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I find myself having a growing disdain for, Christian nationalists, which is where we all kind of came from, right? Just the bigger white evangelical church. So the early Christians, like the Jews, have been just like very nationalist, like you were saying, law and people and the place, very nationalist in general. So maybe that backlash was like, well, we hate them now because they did this to Paul, they did this to Jesus, and just explains how our minds work a little bit,
But he makes that same point in his article that it's not just Christian fundamentalism, it's secular fundamentalism. So like if you platform yourself to a place where this is what I believe, and anybody that believes this, I hate them. You know, it's a callback to what he calls, I've heard this, the upside down kingdom of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You know, they're
Yeah, we see that in today's, general society, in today's politics. It's like, you're not as anti-Semitic as me, so you're out. And that's a big thing we don't want these days.
Yeah, it's scary. It's been resurging. All right. So they all get upset at going away to the Gentiles. And this is going to be a major problem that Paul has to deal with in nearly all of his letters. And this is the big issue with the rest of the New Testament. We've talked about that some in the past. But let's just talk a little bit about other things that happen in the rest of this and over these two chapters. Then they go at Paul, and Paul gets swooped up by the Roman authorities, and they're about to flog him. Kind of funny, just like out of
You had to be there.
I find it comical. I find it comical because they're about to flog him, and Paul's like, "Oh, it's just okay for a Roman citizen," which freaks them out.
Yeah.
Because Rome is not any kind of a noble state at all. But one thing that they did do is they reinforced like citizenship protocol. So if any local, like far-flung in Jerusalem, a far-flung place, outpost, was caught like misbehaving, got reported back home, they would lose their position. So I mean, that's really a big deal.
Isn't that ironic?
In what way?
Because how much have we heard in the last few months? I'm a citizen. Nobody's paying attention to that verbal.
Prove it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not these days. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll follow.
yeah, all he didn't say is I am. Yeah, where's your pen papers?
What I thought was funny about this is at the very end of chapter 23, when Claudius Lysias, who's the commander here, when he writes the letter to the governor, I just thought the letter was funny.
Oh, yeah.
He said, this man was seized by the Jews, they're about to kill him, but I came with my troops and rescued him, for I learned that he was a Roman citizen.
Yeah.
That's not exactly how it happened. Claudius.
But, you know, I find it interesting from the later part of, from like 22, verse 26 through all of 23, that there's so much mention of this, of the commandment. It's like the story revolves around the commander.
Yeah.
We know that Paul had a sister, so.
And the nephew.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I never.
yeah, he never comes up.
Yeah.
He's on
How
the
young is he? Because of the way that the commander treats him.
I know, I thought that exact when you were reading that.
Like he takes him by the hand and leads him off to the play, you know, like.
Is his nephew like a 9-year-old?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Now use your words. Tell
Like,
him.
it was like a brief thing where it was like inappropriate, and I was like, is this normal or is that It's maybe
pretty
this-
funny.
young man, young boy?
Well, yo, yeah.
I was like,
So ideas about youth in the Mediterranean world, I mean, he could have been mid-20s.
Yeah.
But I mean, it could have been 15, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, how old is a kid? I mean, it is interesting that these people took a solemn oath that they must not have been like the crack troops. That like the word gets out.
And I'm wondering what happened to them. Like, did they just die, or did they like, okay, we're gonna eat?
I know. It's like a week go by, like, I'm rethinking this oath thing.
Well, that was a massive contingent that took him away, and we probably like, oh, well.
Huge.
Yeah.
Wait,
Well, I think you should say I'm a Roman or something, because on 24th, no, wait. The commander ordered the Paul be taken into the barracks. He directed that he be flogged and interrogated in order to find out why the people are shouting at him like this. So the solution is flogging. And if you don't in Rome or something, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, basically get information out of them through torture. The Romans didn't mess around. Yeah, and keep in mind, like we said, this is a festival season where Jerusalem is swelled with pilgrims. And if there's any kind of spirit of fervor that all these pilgrims had, it was anti-Roman fervor.
Yeah.
So like they hate the Romans with a passion. They're waiting for God's salvation to show up and blast them off the map. And so like the Romans are on edge to just shut down anything. So as soon as there's this like riot, they rush in and just shut that thing down.
Yeah.
And they're gonna get information out of Paul if they can,
But
any way they need to find out what is happening.
doesn't that make it more curious that they're sending this huge, I don't know what you call this group, what,
Yeah,
500
it's massive.
Roman troops to escort Paul to Felix? Or, don't they need them to guard Jerusalem because of the influx?
I think, yeah. Let's
I think
get
it's
rid of this
how-
problem, make it somebody else's.
Yeah,
You're reducing your force. to
this guy
Jerusalem.
is really
Yeah,
good at
yeah.
pushing blame around, so he's just like, send all of these guys.
But you notice halfway
So that we
there, the 200 walking troops turn and go back.
get get
They're
them
like,
out of
the
their
threat's
neck of
gone.
the woods.
Well, the trouble is Jerusalem. It's
Yeah.
specifically Jerusalem is the place of trouble. So once he's out of Jerusalem, he's fine. And Caesarea is the place where there's it's the base of Roman power in Egypt. There's loads of Romans that are stationed there. But yeah, it's a massive group of people. Massive armed contingent. Okay, so we did talk about Paul getting to, he goes up into the Sanhedrin where the commander takes him into the Sanhedrin, makes him stand on trial there. That is pretty short-lived because he basically recognizes that there's the Pharisees in here and Sadducees and turns them against each other and is able to escape,
Divided conquered.
basically. And then Luke reports that the Lord appeared to Paul and encouraged him that he was going to be able to get out of Jerusalem and then make it to Rome.
I think it's interesting. I'm sorry, I'm like stuck on comparisons between the citizen thing and the current citizen thing. But what we're reading is Paul is getting some, we may not like how it's playing out, but Paul is getting some form of due process. It's like, you know, how do we as
Yeah.
larger Christian community in the United States not read stuff like this and say, we're doing it wrong here and deny, you know, we want to be Paul supporters. Paul got all of this, but we're not giving this to other people. I don't know.
But it's the whole tribalism, because the Jews did not care for the due process. They're like, just get this.
Kill them, yeah.
The Romans, they were saying, look, we have a way of doing things and we're gonna follow those rules. And so
Right,
those
our
are saying
leaders are all anti-Semitic. Maybe they'll get the message eventually.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Carol. I don't know, what do you think is lying underneath that?
Well, I think exactly what they just said. It's like they had a system for doing things and they stuck to it. Now, maybe they wouldn't have if Paul had not been a citizen.
what I'm saying is the Romans had a system.
Yes.
Right.
But the Jews were tribal. They were going off of their emotional urges.
I get
So, you know, there's a tribalism in modern culture today.
Fortunately, they're the people in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a conflict between folks that want to do things by regular order and others that say, we want to get our way no matter what.
Yeah, any other thoughts about these two chapters?
It's just looking back, it's a little bit different, but when God appeared to Paul, he gave him steps. It's almost like, who are you, Lord?
Oh.
And then he says, what shall I do? And he says, get up and go. And it's kind of up to him if he's gonna go, you know, that he's also blind and stuff. But then he goes, and then the next step he talks, he says, get up, be baptized, and it's 10 steps. Then he goes, leave Jerusalem immediately. Next steps, go, I will send you far away to the Gentiles. Yeah, it just seemed kind of neat in a way that it wasn't all at once, you know. And I don't know how to apply that to my life, but I feel like sometimes it's do this and we'll go from there, you know, if you do it.
Yeah.
And I think,
Yeah. Also, Paul's an apostle.
What stood out?
I just try to think about that in terms of like, there's a record of like, I think this is like the record of Jesus from having directing the action of the central players. And like, I just try to think about this for myself. As far as that question, I wonder how I try to apply this to my life. And I just think, this is the record of God directing Paul for the blessing of all of the people that be. And so like, it may not be the case that I'm going to hear from the Lord and get direction because I'm one of the other players. You know what I mean?
thank you.
I go back to that a lot. Like as I read the Bible, am I a prophet? Am I an apostle? No. So there's other things. Like I just think that I know I was trained in a tradition where it's like, what did God do with Abraham? How does that apply to me?
Yeah.
What did God do with Moses? How does that apply to me? Right. There's like a spine of the story, and there's like the central part of the story. But there's all these other people in view whose names we never learned that are like the point of God calling Abraham. So we matter, which is why God directed Paul to have this kind of like a stressed, stretched, harried, horrible life. And like the way that God works in my life may be different.
Bruce and I were talking about this morning because I said it's been so refreshing to me in how we're going through Luke and Acts because it is so different from that fundamentalist evangelical way we were taught to read the Bible.
Immediately apply.
Yes, it's like, okay, read these 3 verses today and find the application for you, you know, instead of read this story of Paul and find maybe the application is looking at how faithful he was in his life, not like I need to say this in this situation and think about some, not the super specific
Yeah.
things that we were taught. That's how you read. You look to find that application for you in this weird story of a guy swallowed by a whale.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Your life better be super interesting or else you're not
Yeah.
doing it right.
Yeah.
Plus, we always were taught that scripture basically dropped out of heaven, went through the man's brain and spewed onto paper. And there was no human input in it. So now you have Luke, who is Greek, and he's saved by Christ. So of course, it doesn't seem unlikely that that would be the emphasis of his gospel and Acts, because he's so grateful for that, and he's trying to share that story, and nobody else is really telling that story. So that might have been his motivation to write the letter.
yeah. And you got, look at that process, because I'm not could you go a little further in your self-talk about where do you get to when so who are you?
Yeah, well, think about all these communities of radical inclusivity that are being founded. And like they're just told, form these communities of love and service without a lot of specifics. And that I'm part of one of those. So it's like I don't expect to hear from the Lord. I'm not a prophet or apostle. I don't expect to be told to live that kind of life. But I do expect that I'm part of one of those communities, and that's great. And so we'll get our heads together and sort of figure out how can we love each other and how do we do that well.
So you gotta tear down your privilege.
Well, I just try to find myself in the story.
Yeah.
Like, there's just like we've done some of those discussions over the last several months about like, we had these people. Wasn't this last month or 2 months ago, where you had that unexpected list of Paul's traveling companions and a bunch of names that I've never seen before. I don't remember seeing those names. I mean, none of us are even that. And it's not like it's above us. It's just they were designated for certain roles. So as Marilyn's talking, I'm just thinking, I remember hearing that kind of teaching about like, see these God guided Paul's steps. So we should expect to hear from God about guided steps. Like, well, in periods of my life, that set me up for radical disappointment. And it's like, where are you, God? Where's the word? Where's the next step? And then I think, so that we don't look like bad Christians, we sometimes narrate our past experience in terms of like, I did that because I felt led by the Lord to do whatever. Like, why can't we just say, I did this because I thought it was a good idea, or I decided to do this.
Yeah.
So I think.
But I don't always have good ideas.
I think this is part of it. Like, talk it out. Talk it out and think through how to make ways forward in our lives. And also, I think it's really critical to note that this is Paul as a founder. He's moving around doing all kinds of stuff as the one that's bringing the faith to the Gentiles. I think and so in that specific role, God is doing certain things in Paul's life in that specific role. Let's also keep in mind, all of the people in the ancient Mediterranean world did not have mobile lives the way that we do now. So like, if your parents were whatever vocation, that's what you did to stay alive for the rest of your life, and what much of your family did. Our lives take place within this thing called capitalism, where we have options and choices. You can training or find ways to sort of make money, and you can make a move geographically, or you can make a move job-wise. And so that's a different world that our lives take place in. And we sometimes take the God-guiding Paul language out and apply it to our lives in capitalism. And it's like, that's not a good move. It's not a good move. Our lives are in this situation that it's in, and that's just what it is. But I just think let's not apply the apostolic language to that. It's just not, it's not healthy.
Yeah.
Comes up, that can justify all kinds of things, or it can just, I don't know, it's not a good thing.
It's easy to default sometimes.
Sure, yeah, but it's a narrative, it's a set of language that we've been taught.
I have a friend who had a stroke and a heart attack and he's messed up. And one of our other friends was like, I told him just to, ask God what he's trying to teach you. And I'm like, oh, how about it just sucks and shit happens.
Yeah,
We don't have control.
yeah. It's very easy to scold those who weep instead of weep at those who weep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, we should probably remember that Paul is an exception. Like the normal person in this time does not travel around like Paul does.
Yeah,
Like, Paul is much more mobile than most persons in this era. And he's like, just by the nature of where he was born and where he was taught, he's already a more travel person than regular bloke might make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, but that's like a once in a lifetime thing. It's not like you do it up, maybe you can do it every year, but like, it's not like Paul is like a weirdo by like the standards of the time.
Yeah,
like most people do not travel like he does. And so like, and he was told to, but also like we're living in like a much more mobile time, but like looking at him as though like he didn't do anything or didn't travel much at all, but like he's like very exceptional for that period. Like most people do not do that.
Right. I'm going way back to when you were talking about Jesus and how they didn't get upset. I've been thinking about, I wonder if it's because Jesus has been crucified, but this is the threat. It's Paul, now at this moment,
He's the active.
he's the one that's out there spreading this to everyone. I could sort of see them thinking, because they talked before, eventually this is going to die out. Well, we need to get rid of people like Paul that are spreading this too. I don't know if that's the case, but
From their standpoint. Right?
yeah, I don't know. But anyway, that just came to mind.
Yeah, that may be. I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of earlier in the narrative, there were thousands of people that joined the way. So like it's a huge movement, but there very well maybe people, there may be a bunch of people that are in authority that are having that mindset. See, like, just let it go. This is not someone that's around. This passion will die out at some point.
Right.
But this guy's actually actively fomenting it.
Yeah, right.
Even if it's not just the active fomenting of it, just when Jesus was crucified, and I'm assuming these Jewish Christians believe there was some resurrection, that was kind of the end of the teaching. How do, we had Jesus teaching, although I don't know how many of these people actually heard much of Jesus teaching either. But, I'm sure they had some of it, and they weren't necessarily interpreting it as the church does today, because we've had additional teachers, right? So in terms of like the inclusiveness, Paul was going out and he was taking what he knew of Jesus and using that to talk about inclusion of the Gentiles and eating with, people that you would not have eaten with before. But the Christian Jews in Jerusalem, they were happy with, okay, there was Jesus. We can now believe in Jesus. But now all this additional stuff, man, where's that coming from? Right? And so that was very threatening.
Yeah, the implications of it.
Well, the Jews have a culture of witnesses to be like, you have to have a certain number of witnesses of an event to be like deemed credible. And because Paul has like stepped into that witness group because he got a first-hand encounter with Jesus, even though Jesus was already gone at that point, he's a threat. And he's like a very active person. But in Jewish culture, you have to have been a witness to something to be deemed credible. So he's more threatening than like a random Joe who is also trying to spread Jesus. Like, because the Jewish culture has the witness, like, that you have to, like, it's a certain level for you to have like that respect in the like tradition of the faith. So he's even more dangerous than
Like, and his witnesses are all Greek or Gentile of what happened. You know, it's his word. And it's witnessed by people they wouldn't respect anyway.
Well, but he's a witness of Jesus, so he's more like, he's
Yeah.
more dangerous
Yeah.
because of that.
Well, it makes me wonder, where the heck is Peter in all this conversation?
What I was gonna say is you actually have,
Very quiet.
there are a bunch of other witnesses there,
Yeah,
in Jerusalem. They're the ones that are keeping peace.
they're the ones that are finding the ways to navigate that Paul is not successful at.
Yeah.
Even though he attempts it, they stop them before.
All right, well, we've got a call to a halt there. Thank you for good engagement, and next month. Oh, sorry. What did you say?
Did you have something to say over there?
I was just
Oh,
gonna say,
sorry.
like, I find that Jesus is annoyingly easy to be co-opted into whatever your narrative is. So, like, for me, it's not super surprising that Jewish people can take the parts that they resonate with Jesus and they co-opt him into the Israel story that they have in their minds. We do that too. Like, I'm guilty of my hyper individualism, my capitalism. Jesus fits really nicely into those. When I take him apart from his story, kind of sell him for parts, he fits really nice into that. So, like, for me, I don't really blame the Jewish people for being like, I like Jesus for this. But when Paul comes in and goes, no, these parts have to fit into the larger story. The larger story is also these people. I don't always like when Jesus does that in my life either. So
It's much more threatening.
it's way more threatening and it's really not comfy. So like for me, I get that. Like for me, when we're like, why is Jesus not the threat? Jesus is the threat. He's just really. Sometimes I think his posture of like I stand at the door and knock, like we can take him where however far in we want. And sometimes that allows us to keep him kind of where we want him.
Yeah, domesticated. Yeah, good word.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Cool. Another great discussion. I appreciate it, Tim.
Thank you.
Yeah, and for those who haven't checked their clock, yeah, we went all the way to 11:40. So good times. All right. Well, we're on the home stretch here. I believe we have Jackie with our last scripture reading here. Is that correct?
John one, right? Yeah. Okay, the eternal word. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. John's witness, the true light. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. This came for a witness to bear witness of the light, that all through him might believe. He was not the light, but was sent to bear witness of the light, of that light. That was the true light, which gives light to every man coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. The Word became flesh, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth.
All right. And I believe Joanna is going to lead us in our benediction.
As I dump everything on the floor. Probably clean this out. It's a lot of good stuff into that. So, go forth into the world in peace. Be of good courage. Hold fast to that which is good. Render to no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the afflicted. Honor everyone. Love and serve our God, rejoicing in the power of the Holy Spirit, and the blessing of our loving God, Parent Creator, Christ Redeemer, Spirit Sustainer, be upon you and remain with you always. Amen.
All right. So yeah, next week, all virtual pajama party. Enjoy. And then we'll be into the 2026 calendar year. Have a Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Well, we just have to do Christmas. New Year's.